Hey, boys and girls, this book is called Introducing Africa, and it's one of 7 books that we're going to be reading about the continents. There are 7 continents, and so we have 7 books to read. This is a picture of the continent of Africa right here, and we're going to learn about the continent. Introducing Continents, Africa, by Chris Oxlade. This is the table of contents. The table of contents is very important because it tells you what chapters are in the book, what subjects are in the book, and what pages they're on. So you can use your table of contents to find out where you can find different information in your book. About Africa. And before we read these 2 pages, I wanted to talk to you about maps being something that is in a nonfiction book. It's an important feature of a nonfiction book. Maps give you information. This is a map of the world, and in dark green, it shows you where Africa is. Okay, and this is a table right here, and it gives you facts about Africa. So in dark green, it gives you a subject, and then in the yellow, it tells you information about that subject. About Africa. Africa is one of the world's 7 continents. A continent is a huge area of land. Africa is the 2nd largest continent. Half of Africa is north of the equator, and half is south of the equator. Africa is almost surrounded by water. To the west is the Atlantic Ocean. To the east is the Indian Ocean. The Mediterranean Sea is to the north. The huge island of Madagascar is also part of Africa. Africa Fact File. Area. It's about 11,724,000 square miles. Population, more than 1 billion. Number of countries, 56. Highest mountain, Kilimanjaro at 19,341 feet. And the longest river is the Nile River at 4,132 miles. Famous places. You might have heard of some of the famous places in Africa. Some of these places are ancient. The pyramids in Egypt near the city of Cairo. Ancient Egyptians built them over 4,500 years ago. And here's another important feature of a nonfiction text. It's captions. And captions are usually next to a picture. And it says, this photograph shows the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. The local name of the Victoria Falls is Mozi Oya Tunya, which means smoke that thunders. The Victoria Falls are on the Zambezi River between the countries of Zambia and Zimbabwe. They are 5,604 feet wide and 324 feet high. Geography. In the north and south of Africa are vast deserts with huge sand dunes. The Sahara Desert covers almost all of North Africa. The Zamib Desert and Kalahari Desert are in the south. The Sahara Desert is the largest hot desert in the world. Kilimanjaro is a volcano, but it does not erupt anymore. There are vast grassy plains in Africa called grasslands. Along the equator, there are rainforests. Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya are the 2 highest mountains in Africa. They are in East Africa. The Nile is the longest river in the world. It starts in the middle of Africa and flows all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Other great rivers in Africa are the Congo, the Niger, and the Zambezi. The Nile River flows through the desert in Egypt. These fishermen are preparing their boats on the shores of Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the largest lake in Africa. It is also the 2nd largest lake in the world. It measures 209 miles from north to south and 149 miles from west to east. And more than 200 different types of fish live in the lake. Weather. In much of Africa, the weather is warm or hot most of the time. Along the equator, the weather is tropical. It is hot and wet all year round. It rains almost every day in the rainforest. Trees and other plants grow well in the warm, wet, tropical weather. Heavy rain showers move across the African plains during the rainy season. In the grasslands, there is a dry season when it never rains and a rainy season when it rains almost every day. In the deserts, it is dry year-round. It is very hot in the daytime, but cold at night. Animals. An amazing variety of animals live in Africa. Elephants, giraffes, rhinoceroses, and lions live on the grasslands. There are also big herds of zebras, wildebeest, and antelopes. Gorillas live in the rainforest. Herds of wildebeest and elephants live on the African plains. The ring-tailed lemurs live in nature reserves in Madagascar. Madagascar is a large island on the east coast of Africa. Most of the animals that live there don't live anywhere else on Earth. The most famous are the lemurs. Plants. Most unusual plants grow in Africa. Plants grow very well in the wet, warm rainforests. There are huge trees, such as mahogany trees and ebony trees. There are also amazing plants, such as orchids and African violets. These beautiful orchids are growing in the rainforest in Madagascar. Palm trees grow in the desert where water comes up from the ground. Baobab trees with thick trunks and thorny acacia trees stand in the grasslands. Palm trees grow at oases in deserts. Papyrus grow along the banks of the Nile River. The ancient Egyptians used papyrus to write on, like paper. People. There are hundreds of different groups of people living in different parts of Africa. Big groups include Arabs and Berbers in North Africa. Some small groups of people, such as Mbuti, live in the rainforests. Mbuti pygmies live in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They hunt animals and gather plants. Many different languages are spoken in Morocco, including Arabic, Berber, and French. More than 1,500 different languages are spoken in Africa. People have spoken these African languages for thousands of years. In many African countries, people also speak English, Portuguese, French, and Arabic. African culture. Many African people still do their traditional dances on special occasions. They dress in traditional costumes, and some wear body paint. Maasai men in East Africa perform a special jumping dance. These Chuka people from Kenya play traditional music on drums. Most towns and villages in Africa have a dirt soccer field. Soccer is the most popular sport in Africa. Every 2 years, the national soccer teams of African countries play in the Africa Cup of Nations. Cricket is played in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Kenya. Countries. There are 56 countries in Africa. Algeria in North Africa is the largest. The Seychelles in Indian Ocean is the smallest, and it is made of many islands. And this map shows the countries of Africa. So right here is a map, and each country is labeled. And some of the labels are really small because the countries are close together. Juba is the capital of South Sudan, which is Africa's newest country. Countries from Europe once ruled most of Africa. That is why people in some African countries speak English or French. A new African country was made in 2011 when South Sudan split away from the rest of Sudan. Cities and countryside. 4 in every 10 Africans live in a city. Cairo, the capital city of Egypt, is the African city with the greatest number of people. 11 million people live there. Many people live in slums without electricity or running water. This is a view over the rooftops of Cairo, the capital of Egypt. In many African villages, people get water from their village well. In the countryside, people live in small villages. Many make a living from farming or looking after herds of animals. Some also find food by hunting animals and gathering plants. Natural resources and products. Africa has many natural resources. Oil is found under the ground in North Africa and West Africa. Nigeria produces the most oil of any country in Africa. Diamonds and gold are mined from the ground in South Africa. These are oil wells on the banks of Niger River in Nigeria. A farmer in the Ivory Coast cuts down pods full of cocoa beans. Farmers grow crops for themselves to sell at market or to send to other countries. Bananas, yams, coffee, tea, and peanuts are popular crops to grow. Most of the world's cocoa beans come from West Africa. They are turned into chocolate. Cocoa. Fun facts. The Great Rift Valley is a huge valley in East Africa. It is 4,000 miles long and up to 60 miles wide. The Suez Canal carries huge ships 101 miles across the desert between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. A large amount of the world's gold comes from mines in South Africa. The cheetah lives on the grasslands of Africa. It can reach a speed of 70 miles per hour when it is chasing prey. Quiz. Which African river is the longest river in the world? That was the Nile. Which city are the pyramids at Giza close to? Cairo. On which island do lemurs live? Madagascar. What grows in Africa that chocolate comes from? Cocoa beans. This is a glossary. The glossary is an important feature of a nonfiction text. It tells you important words that are in the book, and it tells you what their definitions are. So if you don't understand what a word means, you can always go to the glossary to take a look and read the definition. These are books that you can read if you want to find out more information about Africa, and these are websites that you can go to if you want to get more information about Africa. And this is the index. The index is a very important feature of nonfiction text. It tells you important words that are in the book and what pages they are on in the book. So if you want to see about languages, you would look at page 19 or page 23 because the word languages is mentioned on those 2 pages. So if you can't find the information you're looking for, like where to go in the table of contents, you can always go to your index and check your index. All right, boys and girls, this has been a book called Introducing Africa, and I hope that you learned a lot, and I hope that you enjoyed it.